patchwork of our days, stitched together in so many ways. With every thread, our lives entwined in this quilted love, our hearts.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts, also known as the Quiltmaker Homestead, and today we're doing something a little bit different than we have been doing the last several weeks. So great to see you. Hello everybody. I'm super excited for today. And if you're watching on the replay, feel free to skip to the good part, right, where we jump in and we get started with this project. I have a few things to share before we get started, and if you're here during the live, I hope you stay for the duration and hang out with everybody. It's so great to see you. Hello everybody. Patsy asked if there was a PES stitch file included in today's design. Yes ma'am. The link for today's design, which we are stitching this today, is down in the description box, and this file or this design is free through Sunday, May the 25th, if I have that calendar right, the 25th. Monday, this is going in the Etsy shop. So if you have an embroidery machine, this stitches in a 5x7 hoop, and I'm going to walk you through making this entire thing. We're going to paint the embroidery hoop and everything, which is going to go by super fast. The stitching time on this is 24 minutes, and I have my machine slowed down just a little bit, so we'll be at the machine just a little bit longer than 24 minutes, and then I'm going to show you how to unhoop and finish it on the back. So that's what we're doing today. Hi everybody. Beverly, you're on your last nerve. Well, sit down and chill out and hang out with us and get ready for the long weekend. Hi everybody, it's so great to see you. Speaking of little files, I'm going to bring you down to my desk. I have a couple things I just want to show you because I've been busy this week. Let's see, my desk. This is the design we're doing today. And what's fun is you can change out the colors, right? You don't have to use the colors I did. You can change them out, change the color of your hoop, and your project looks totally different, right? Isn't that fun? This is what we're doing today, and it hardly shows up on the camera because I have the lighting on so bright, but I'm going to try to do it sideways. The background of this design is quilted, which is super cool. And so this design is called Stay Salty, which I kind of like that saying, stay salty. But I have a couple other ones that dropped in the Etsy shop today. So if you have fun with this design and you like the small projects like this, I dropped the mushroom design today. The hummingbird stained glass design is in the Etsy shop today. The blue crab, which he's red, so that means he's been cooked, right? The little blue crab with the netted quilting in the background. And then the butterfly with the growth, change, and renewal words. Of course, what's really cool about that is if you just liked the butterfly, you don't have to stitch the words, right? And what's also really cool about each one of these designs is, let's say you wanted to put this on a shirt, you could skip past the quilting parts of the design and just stitch the design. You could put this on a bag, a shirt, a pillow, all kinds of stuff, right? Same with the blue crab. How cute would that be on a black shirt with the blue crab right in the middle? So you don't necessarily have to use this the way that I've done this project, which is hooped in a little bamboo embroidery hoop, right? And if you get any of these patterns, there's a little bitmap, like you could take a picture of it and it brings you to this video. Although all of the designs are different, the basic steps are going to be the same. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to show you how I hoop this project and each one of the steps at the embroidery machine, and then how I finish it off relatively neat on the back side. So you could hang this on the wall. You could add a magnet right inside your hoop and clink, put it on the refrigerator. How cute would that be? All kinds of things you could do with this. This is a 4-inch hoop, right? And so I dare say that this is not too big to use as a Christmas ornament as well. So those went in the Etsy shop this morning. This one's free through Sunday, and then Monday, that one's going in the Etsy shop as well. But before we move on to stitching, I just wanted to share this in case you haven't seen this video. I put out a video a couple of days ago of a time lapse of this piece. And y'all, I have really this week taken some time to get back to my roots, which is more of a mixed media type of art, right? This is a mix of watercolor and machine embroidery. I digitized one of my mom's photos from, I think it was 2017. She took this photo, and I digitized the dock and the workboat, and then did some watercolor painting, and then stitched this out. Of course, I'm going to put this into my Made in Matthew studio tour in November, because it's sort of fitting. We live in a town where working on the water is prevalent, right? So anyway, I just wanted to share that. If you want to see this, a time lapse of that, you can find that video here on my YouTube channel. Should be pretty close to the top of the screen or the top of the list of videos. Thank you guys. I had so much fun with that. Digitizing classes, in the description box there's a link for all the classes that I have available currently. That list is ever changing. Like right now I have 2 classes next week, the same basics of embrilliance and digitizing a quilt label, a freestanding quilt label with a finished satin edge. And this morning I just finished typing out all of the instructions for digitizing true type fonts using a bean stitch. And so this is going to be a class that's coming up available soon. I just finished, like I said, I even have photo examples of all of the steps and written out detailed instructions. And this will be a small group learning class through Zoom, offered in Etsy. And if you click on the link, if you're watching this like a week from now, you might see a class available for this. But right now I haven't yet quite posted that because I just finished. But yeah, if you want to learn more about digitizing, this was Stitch Artist Level 1, and it's so much fun. Okay. Oh, also, I don't know if you can see right behind me. This piece right here, I called it a mug rug, but then I realized how nice it fit in that standing frame right there, and it's kind of hard to see because it's a little ways away, right? But that is coming up in June, so keep your eyes open for that. That was so much fun. That is paper piecing with some raw edge applique. Let me set that there and get that out of the way. All right, so now we're going to do a little bit of crafts. A little bit of crafts because I'm going to start with the embroidery hoop and get that painted so it can be drying while we are stitching. And it's on the warmer side. It's not as hot as it has been in this room, but it's still warm enough that this is going to dry pretty quickly. I do have a link for the embroidery hoops down in the description box. I think you get like 20 of these hoop sets for like $20. That price is ever changing, so the price might be cheaper. It might be a few more dollars more when you check it, but 20 hoops for 20 bucks, I think that's a really good deal. I'm going to remove the inner part of the hoop, and I'm going to bring over some acrylic paint, right? I'm going to shake it up because this, I don't think this bottle has been used in like 3 years. Who knows what we're going to find when we put some out into the tray. But I like to do a little wash on my embroidery hoop, right? You could just put it in there like that, right? And it's super cute, but I think the colored frame sort of just really frames it and makes it even more cute. And it doesn't take a lot of paint, y'all. I'm just putting a couple drops of paint right in there. And I'm going to take some water and thin this paint out and make it sort of like a wash. You could do a solid paint on your hoop, but on this one I'm going to do just a simple little wash just to add a little bit of color. Before the live, I noticed Heather was saying she's already made this project, and she dipped her frame in coffee and stained her frame with coffee. And I really liked that idea, Heather. I really did. So I'm just going to go through and we're going to paint this really quickly. This is such a light teal that you might not see it. Again, the lights are so bright in here. But I'm just doing a quick little wash on my frame. Just like so. Just making sure to get all the parts that are going to be seen, right? Yeah, it's actually gorgeous outside. It is so nice outside. This week, I have harvested some beets. I have harvested quite a few strawberries, lots of peas, lots of romaine lettuce. And it's so nice just to be able to go out to the garden and pick those things up. We have some baby cucumbers coming in. And we have a couple of volunteer plants. Harlan thinks they're pumpkins. I'm kind of thinking they're zucchini. I don't know how to tell the difference. He's saying they're pumpkins though from last year. But they're humongous. And I think it's so ironic that we invest in planting plants and they do okay. But from the seeds from last year's plants, we have volunteers growing up in several beds, and the volunteers are doing far better than what we started from plants from the hardware store. Do you know what I'm saying? Isn't that ironic? Okay, so that's just a quick little wash over top of that frame. I even did the inside, okay? And then the edges, both front and back edges. I'm going to dip my brush in water and I'm going to go set this on a little hook so it can dry. And it's right behind me. And let me just clean up my fingers because I don't want to get paint on my fabric or nothing like that. I just have some baby wipes here. Thank you to my moderator, Mimsy, today. Thank you so much for keeping an eye on everything, providing links and all that fun stuff. Just making sure I get all the paint off my fingers, and I'm going to go ahead and clean this paint tray up too, because I don't want that paint to dry in there while we are stitching. I always keep baby wipes close by. All right. So now that that's painted and drying, and I'm going to move this water so I don't spill it, y'all, because I have been so clumsy in the last several weeks. I walk into things, I bump into stuff, I have bruises on my arms and my legs from just walking into doors. It is so crazy. Like all of a sudden, I am so clumsy. I don't leave any open bottles of liquid here on my desk for that reason now. All right, so I have already opened up the PES file. Today I'm stitching on my Baby Lock Altair 2, right? The files in the description box, the link brings you over to Patreon right now while it's free, right? There's a PDF that looks like this. That's going to break down all of the color stops. Now, each one of these colors on here represents when the machine is going to stop. It's going to stop several times throughout stitching this design, right? Now, the colors on the on this page you can use, or you can use your own colors. Today, I'm using totally different colors than what you see here. These just represent stops. It tells the machine you need to stop because she needs to change the color of thread. But sometimes a color stop is just an indication for the machine to stop so that you can do a step. And you're going to see that today, right? And then I went through and I listed the materials you need to get ready for this project, and you'll see that here in just a second. And actually, each one of the projects that I showed a few minutes ago has instructions just like that. So if you're watching because you got the hummingbird, the design's going to stitch differently, but all the steps at the machine are going to be the same. We're going to do a tack down stitch, trim the batting, lay down the fabric, and then stitch the design. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. There's the PDF, and then there's a zip file, and you need to unzip that zip file, right, to access the stitching files. And there's like 8 different ones based on the machine that you're actually stitching on. Okay, so I already have the design sent to my embroidery machine, and I have it loaded in there, so that's ready to go. And I'm going to get my hoop ready. Okay, this is a 5x7 hoop, which is pretty common standard hoop, right? And I'm going to hoop some stabilizer. So let's just talk about the stabilizer for a second. In the instructions, I say to use a no-show mesh because it's super light. And I wanted a light stabilizer so that if it's sandwiched in between the layers of the hoop, it's really light and it's not taking up much room. I think you could use a cutaway. I think you could use a tearaway. But those materials are thicker than a no-show mesh. And so hooping, if you wanted to hoop your project at the end, might be a little bit more difficult. So I said to use a no-show mesh in the hoop, right? However, after doing umpteen million gazillion t-shirt quilts, I have lots and lots and lots of scraps of fusible interfacing. And this is a piece of Pilon P44F. And it is just as light as a no-show mesh. It's actually even a little bit more fragile, right? So we need to be careful when hooping this. But I like to use what I have available in my scraps. And so I have been using my Pilon P44F instead of a no-show mesh. I'm going to go ahead and hoop that. And I actually have the bumpy side facing up and the back side is smooth. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put this in my hoop. And before I tighten it up, I'm just going to pull this nice and flat. Once this hoop is tight, the Pilon P44 is a little bit fragile and will tear if you try to flatten it out by pulling on the edges, right? So if you need to get out any ripples or waves in that stabilizer, now's the time to do it before you tighten up the hoop. So I'm just going to push it down just a little bit and I'm going to tighten up this hoop. Wanda says, will this fit in a 4x4 work area? I've only digitized this to fit into a finished 4-inch embroidery hoop, which means the design stitches out at 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, which is too large for a 4x4 inch hoop. So sadly, to fit this smaller embroidery hoop, bamboo hoop, the design has to be a little bit bigger than the hoop, right? So unfortunately, this particular design only stitches out in a 5x7 hoop or larger. Okay, and you know what I'm going to do just to secure this interfacing just a little bit is I have a couple of T-pins. And I'm going to add one here on the left and one here on the right. And that just prevents that interfacing from pulling down inside the hoop at all, okay? Nice and snug against the embroidery frame. And now we are ready to jump over to the embroidery machine. Now before we do that, let's just take a look at the other things we need for this design, right? I have a piece of Quilters Select cotton batting. You could use warm and natural. You could use any kind of batting. Just know that the loft will change based on the type of batting you're using, right? This is super thin. So that's what I'm going to be using. And then a piece of fabric. I was looking through my stash and I had some sand dollar fabric, which I think is perfect for this piece, right? So I have a piece of fabric here, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So at the machine, the first thing that's going to do is stitch down a circle and tack down my batting. Then we're going to take it off the machine and we're going to trim all the extra batting right close to that stitch. It's going to be a perfect circle of batting in the hoop. And then we're going to lay down the fabric over top of that circle like this. And you'll see that here in just a second. But the very next thing that happens after that is it's going to quilt a background cross hatching over top of the entire circle. So the first color of thread that I'm using, I want it to blend into this, whatever fabric you're using at this point, right? This fabric, the first color of thread you're using, pick a thread that blends into whatever fabric you're using. Okay, so I already have that ready to go, and we're ready to jump over to the embroidery machine. Now I'm just gonna lay this centered right over top. And you don't need a piece this big. I just like to be on the safe side. The circle is going to stitch directly in the center of the hoop. If you have embroillants, could it be sized down just a bit? I think if you have enthusiast, you could size it down just a little bit. I think with enthusiast, and I could be wrong, maybe it's essentials. Y'all, that's why I don't that's why I'm not affiliated and I don't earn any commission, because I get all the modules confused. But I believe it's enthusiast that you can enlarge and decrease the size of just by a little bit on in both directions, right? The size of the stitches. So in that case, you could, yes. Just know that if you were to hoop it in a 4x4 inch hoop, and you were to make this design smaller and you did the background quilting, your background quilting might not come over the edge of your hoop, right? It might not fill in the total space of this embroidery hoop. So just keep that in mind. Also, Heather says essentials will allow sizing. Thank you, Heather. All right, essentials. You could resize the design a little bit without affecting the stitching too much, right? Okay, we're going to come over to the embroidery machine. Where is that at? Here we go. All right, there's that. And I'm going to go ahead and wake this machine up. She's been sleeping. I have my top thread loaded. And what I have in the bobbin is just white bobbin thread, right? I'm not matching the colors of my top threads. I just have a white bobbin thread down below. I'm going to put my little hoop on. And I'm just checking to see how bright that is. Yeah, I think you can see pretty well. And we're ready to get started. So the first thing that's going to do is tack down the batting in a perfect circle. Dun, 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 dun. See that perfect circle? And we don't even have to try. So at this point, we're going to remove the hoop, okay? Just slide it right on out of there. And we're going to come back to my desk. And we're going to take a pair of scissors. Today I'm using these. This came in a set with my embroidery machine. But they're made by Janome. They're perfect for trimming inside the hoop. And I'm going right next to that batting and just trimming right along, removing all of the extra. See that? Perfect little circle. Oh no, what did I do? My desk. There we go. I clicked off of you. So there's our circle of batting. And now we can bring in our fabric and we're going to lay it right over top. The only thing to consider when cutting your piece of fabric, like I cut mine a little bit long, right? But we just want it bigger than the embroidery hoop so that we have some extra on the back side to tuck up around and down inside the hoop. So it just needs to be a little bit bigger, right? About 5 inches by 5 inches is about perfect. I just cut a chunk of piece off. We're going to lay that right over top. You could 505 spray it, but I'm just going to lay it right on top and bring it right back to the embroidery machine. So the next thing it's going to do takes 2 minutes. It's going to do a tack down stitch of the fabric so the fabric doesn't shift around, and then it's going to do a little quilting design in the background, okay? It's not even going to stop. It's going to do the tack down stitch and go right straight into the background quilting. And we can just sit back and relax. So on this particular design, it's going to do a little cross hatching design, which is super cute. It gives you that quilted look, right? A little dimension in the background going on. And it's perfectly spaced and perfectly stitched. So my top thread, I have a Madeira cream colored thread. It's not shiny. It's like a matte colored embroidery thread. And it just blends right in. So really all you see is the texture of the quilting. And I think the little sand dollar fabric is perfect for this design. So just like that, we have a quilted background. I think you can see the texture of it and the lighting just a little bit, right? So now it's going to do the very bottom portion of the shell. So I'm going to do a color change, and I have picked out 3 colors for this design, and I just have to decide in which order am I going to use them, right? And I think I will use this sea green-ish color for this step. So I'm just going to switch out my top thread pretty quickly. And for the rest of the threads, I'm actually using Brother Red embroidery thread, which this machine loves. It has had no problems with this thread. And my fingers are going to be in the camera for a minute. All right, and we're ready to start with this part. And this part is going to take 7 minutes. So for some of you, it's going to be 7 minutes of pleasure because you just love watching machines stitch out designs, right? And for some of you, you're going to say, this is 7 minutes of hell because this is so dang boring. I fall in the first category, but if you fall in the second, now's a good time to go get a snack, right? And I'm actually going to stop the machine because I don't know if you can see it. Now, what disturbs me is when that top thread doesn't get pulled all the way down to the back, right? There's a tiny bit, it's about 1 inch long of top thread that's stuck loose on the top. I'm going to snip that so the rest of the design stitches over top of where it started. But see that little thread right there? All right, now we can hit go. And we're in for 7 minutes of viewing pleasure. I will not be singing for you today, Heather, though. No, I'm sorry. Maybe for the quilt retreat sometime this weekend. Patreon members, don't forget our weekend quilt retreat starts tomorrow. 12 to 9 tomorrow. And then Sunday we pick back up at 1 o'clock and we stay until 8 p.m. I have a quilt that needs to be long arms for a client, so I'll be doing that in part of the time tomorrow. And then the rest of the weekend is playtime, so who knows what I'm going to do with the rest of my time during the quilt retreat. I have no idea. I don't know about jokes either. I don't have any good jokes. So this entire design was digitized, and I did use some features in Stitch Artist Level 2. So if you were to try to recreate this design, Stitch Level Artist 2, you'd be able to do all the things. I did curve some of the stitches, and I think that that is a feature of Stitch Artist Level 2. And when I was digitizing this, I actually stitched it out about 8 different times, changing things up until I finally got it to look exactly the way I wanted it to. It's a good thing I have a pretty hefty stash pile of scraps because that's what I usually tend to use when I am testing a design. So now we're just watching. I've been doing really good with my calorie counting, y'all. I even created an Excel spreadsheet to help me track my calories because I'm trying to eat in a calorie deficit, yet also paying attention to my carbs and my protein and my fat grams. And I've been doing really well. How much thread do you go through testing? A lot. But I was blessed that for Christmas, Harlan's parents gave me an 80 count thread, spools of thread, brother red thread for Christmas. And then for my birthday, Harlan gave me another set of 80 colors. I've linked that thread down in the description box. That was nice because it came in a carry-in case and it came in layers, so you could just open one layer at a time, right? It's in an enclosed case. And it's relatively cheap when you talk about embroidery thread, right? Compared to some other brands, the Brother Red is like in my price point. Do you know what I'm saying? But I was gifted two 80 spool sets, pretty close together. And I already had one 60 spool set. But even with that, I go through certain colors really fast. And so I've had to buy bigger spools of certain colors. You know what I'm saying? You know what? I did try the MyFitnessPal on my phone. But to me, I just find, maybe because back in my 30s, I lost 60 pounds. And I did it back in my 30s. You know, I didn't have a fancy cell phone like what they have now, right? With the apps and stuff. So I went to the bookstore and I bought two books. One book broke down foods into calories, and the other book broke foods down into fat grams, right? Or, yeah. And so I was manually tracking and counting my calories that way. And I think I'm stuck on that because it worked so good back in my 30s. I lost 60 pounds one time by doing that. And so I think I'm stuck in my ways on that. And I really struggled with the MyFitnessPal about a couple years ago when I tried and unsuccessfully didn't manage to lose any weight. So I'm back to my roots. But I am using ChatGPT to figure out my macros for meals, which is super fast and accurate, you know? I'll tell ChatGPT, okay, for dinner I'm having a chicken breast, and I'm using 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm using paprika, and I'm air frying a sweet potato that weighs 6 ounces, you know, and it gives me the complete macro breakdown. It's so much faster than looking it up in a book. And then I'm just keeping track of it in a spreadsheet because that's just who I am. All right, so there goes 7 minutes, and the first part of our shell is finished. So now it's going to stitch the middle part of our shell. So I'm going to switch the top thread color again. Today I have the door closed. You might still hear Poppy though. Harlan, because it's a holiday weekend, he got off of work early today. So the bird sees him outside walking around. He's going to start calling out for him. So I closed my door, hoping that would help. All right. This next part also takes 7 minutes, okay? See, that time it worked perfectly and the top thread pulled towards the back of the hoop. Let me just tell you though, 2 nights this week, I cut up a chicken breast into little nuggets and did air fried chicken nuggies that are super healthy and packed full of protein. And they are better than Chick-fil-A nuggies. If y'all want to know more about that, maybe I'll do a little video and put it on Facebook. They look just like Chick-fil-A nuggies, but they taste a whole heck of a lot better, and they're way better for you. And I'm even starting to feel better. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing this for about 2 weeks now, and I'm even starting to feel a little bit better than I had been feeling for a long time. I'm still not waking up super energized, but it's probably because I go to sleep really late. I've never been someone who can go to sleep early. Do you know what I mean? But yet I get up super early. So that might just be me being deprived of sleep. Melissa, you also go to bed late and wake up early too. I'm hoping one day my body just adjusts to that, but it hasn't yet, and we've been doing it for a long time. So I don't think it's gonna ever be something my body just gets used to. I think I just need to start going to bed maybe an hour earlier. Do you know what I mean? But that takes a lot of discipline, and I can already see if I did that, I'm gonna lay in bed and just think about stuff until I fall asleep an hour later. And I would rather be doing something than just laying there thinking. I like those colors together, don't you? It looks very beachy. Not bitchy, beachy. Belinda, you have that thread too and you love it? I really do. I love that thread. Don't get me wrong though. One thing I've always said, I never claim to be a brand loyalist. I tend to use what I like. Sometimes it's expensive stuff, and sometimes it's very cheap and budget friendly, right? Like this thread. But I also really like Floriani thread. I really do. My budget doesn't like it as much as this thread here though. I didn't get the joke though, Heather. That's why I kind of avoided reading it out loud. Glad to see you with a cap rather than a can. Oh, this? I'm drinking water. I hate it. Wanda, some of my projects do fit in a 4" by 4" hoop. If you were to click on the link that brings you over to all my embroidery projects, it's down in the description box. Some of my stuff does stitch in a 4" by 4" hoop. Not everything, but some of those things do. Yvonne says, I'm on the keto low carb diet. Glad to see someone else is dieting. Yvonne, I'm right there with you. Although I wouldn't say I'm doing keto. I'm just trying to eat in a calorie deficit. because back in my 30s that worked really well, and so far it's working really well now too, right? And so I looked up what my daily calorie intake should be, and I'm eating below it so that I can lose weight. So far it's working. But back in my mid-30s, I lost 60 some pounds, and I actually got too skinny, if that's possible, if that's such a thing. But I actually looked kind of sickly. So I don't want to lose, but I weighed less when I lost that weight too. So back in my 30s when I started losing that weight, I think I was like in my 160s, and I wouldn't mind being there again. Do you know what I'm saying? That's... All right, we're coming to the end of that color. So now it's going to stitch out the very top of the shell. So we're going to change out the thread color one more time. It's going to stitch, yeah, the top of the shell and then stop. And on both of the previous ones that I've stitched out, and let me just show you this so you know what I'm talking about. The next part it's going to do is stitch out the top of the shell and then stop. But what I did on this stitch out is I used the same thread to stitch out the bottom details of the shell. So I just hit go and it stitched out the bottom details of my shell. But I added a color stop just in case one of these times when I stitch it out, I want to use another additional color at the bottom. This time I'm going to use the same, just like this. We're going to stitch this out, it's going to stop, and then I'm going to hit go again and use the same top thread for the bottom of the shell. But I wanted the option to change it out if I wanted to. Do you know what I'm saying? We're going to come back over here. I'm going to switch out that top thread. Oops. See, I'm bumping into stuff all the time. I'm just tying those two threads together and pulling it right through. This next part is going to take 5 minutes. Belinda, you're on a low-calorie diet too. Belinda's trying intermediate fasting some days. Some days she does good, some days not so good. I would tell you, when I fast, here's my problem with that. And I really want to have the discipline to do it. But when I break a fast, I tend to binge. Like, I'm just like anything I can get my hands on. And then it just totally defeats the whole purpose. You know what I'm saying? But I just get so hangry. And I don't really know that it's good for my marriage. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'd like to get to a point where I could do some intermediate fasting, but I'd also like to be a pleasant person. Barbara says, great background fabric for this design. Don't you think so, the little sand dollars? Belinda, you'd like to have the recipe. Okay, then I'm going to cook. Believe me, I'm going to be doing those nuggets a lot because they're really great for my diet. and they are delicious. Like, if I had my choice between these air fried nuggets and going to Chick-fil-A, y'all know I love some Chick-fil-A. I love it. I'd rather have the air fried nuggets. Let me write it down so I don't forget. I'll do a video and I'll share it on my Facebook. Air fried nugget video. It was super easy and super fast, and it only took 20 minutes in my air fryer to cook them. You know what, Heather? It might be pronounced bro thread. I see it brother thread. Brother thread. Believe me, I'm probably mispronouncing it, like I do so many other things. Beverly, I like to hear that you've gone down, but not because of stress. I hate to hear that you're stressed out. Stress is so bad for you. Believe me, I know. I know. My blood pressure is so out of control. Isn't that shell so pretty? I really like, and I don't know that you can see it too much because of the lighting, but I love the way that embroidery thread picks up on the light with different stitches. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just looks shiny. We're coming towards the end of this step. Only once daily, says my machine prefers Madeira threads. Isn't it funny how the machines have preferences like that? I will tell you, my baby lock, I have not found a thread yet that it doesn't like, which is awesome. Now, high maintenance Bernina back there, that embroidery machine, she does not like brother red thread at all. She does not like it at all, okay? But she loves Floriani thread. She loves that thread, and I never, well, I won't say I never have issues when I use that thread. I always have issues with that machine for some reason. But I have less issues if I use Floriani thread. Do you know what I mean? All right, I'm gonna see how it stopped and it's moved down towards the bottom of the shell. You could change colors at this point. I'm gonna keep the same thread color as I used at the top of the shell. And I'm just gonna hit go. And this part takes only 1 minute. Heather asked, does the painting help reduce the stress this week? It did. I love it so much. That is like my happy zone. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe because it's something I've done since I was a teenager. And it's something I used to do deep into the early morning hours on most nights for a really long time. And when I do it now, I just feel kind of the same feeling that I felt back then. And it's just chill for me. Do you know what I mean? So all that's left to stitch out on this design is the words at the top, stay salty, right? And I think for this design, I'm going to switch it back and use that sea green color for my words to be that color. So I'm going to do one more thread change. I hope y'all can hear me okay when I'm talking while the machine is running. Is there a variated thread you could recommend? Linda was wondering. You know, I haven't ever bought any, but Donna sent me some and I've used it a couple of times. I believe it was Sulky. I'd have to look in the box to see what brand it was, but it worked really great. And it was so much fun to see the colors changing throughout. But off the top of my head, I'm not sure which brand it was. I would have to go get the box and open it up, which I can do here in a minute if you remind me. It's just right there behind me underneath that desk. And the words are going to take 2 minutes. Of course, the time might change machine to machine and whether you have it sped up or slowed down, right? While that's stitching, let me grab that box of thread. Actually, it was right behind me on the floor. I'll put it in a box with some other stuff. It's Madeira. It's Madeira. That's what Donna sent me. But she also sent me Coats and Clark. And I'll show you these here in just a minute. Loud and clear. Oh, good. I was wondering if the machine was making too much noise and you really couldn't hear what I was saying. I would watch it back on the replay and be like, this is ridiculous, Lisa. Yvonne has used Isacord variated thread, and her Bernina loves Isacord. I have not tried Isacord with my Bernina. I'll have to look into that. Robin uses exquisite variated thread by Dime. I haven't tried that yet either. I'll have to remember that. And that little chime means our design is finished. So that's it, right? We can take this away from the machine. Let's come back to my desk. But before we finish this up, I just want to show you the variated thread that Donna sent me before I forget. Okay, so this is Madeira, and those are the colors that she sent me. And I have used this in my baby lock, and it stitched fabulously. I have not used it in my Bernina yet. And then she also had this, and I have not stitched with this yet, but this is a Coats & Clark. But that looks like a lot of fun too, doesn't it? All right. So here we are with our finished embroidery, right? Now, of course, I would take the time to go through, usually I do this before I even unhoop it, okay? I go through and I cut my little jump stitches. Now, to save a little bit of time in today's video, I'll do that in my own time, right? But there's little tiny jump stitches between each one of the letters, and I like to cut them out, right? And I find it really helpful to have a pair of flat tweezers. It grabs that little tiny thread, and you can go in with little clips and clip them out of there, right? My fingers have a hard time grabbing on the little tiny threads that sometimes those jump stitches are so small, right? So this is what I use to cut those jump stitches, but we're going to save some time today and we're going to move past that, okay? And I'll do that this weekend during the quilt retreat when I have some free time. I'll take out my little T-pins. I will loosen up my hoop. Robin said very summery. Sheila said pretty. Isn't that pretty? Heather says she was so excited about hooping her design, she didn't even notice the jump stitches. That's funny. All right, so this is what we have, right? And it's so hard to see that quilting, but it's in there. That lighting is just so bright. I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to take my snips again, and I'm going to cut away the extra. In your case, it might be no-show mesh. In my case, it's Pellon P44. And I'm going to just trim this away so that we are not hooping that in my hoop as much. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just going to go right around the circle on the back and cut that off. Just like so. And so here's the back of the design. See that? You can see the quilting better on the back than you can the front because of the light. All right, so at this point we have not trimmed the extra fabric yet, right? I'm going to bring in the top of my hoop, which is nice and dry now. It's a light teal color. Actually, it's darker in person than what you see on the screen because of the light, okay? And I'm going to be using some of Aleene's Tacky Glue. I love this stuff, right? You can even get this at the Dollar Tree. I order several bottles at a time through Amazon, but you can find it at craft stores too, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and position the underside, the small part of my hoop on the back. Because I just found it way easier to do it that way than to try to eyeball it from the front, okay? So I'm going to take some Aleene's Tacky Glue, which my bottle is like 3/4 of the way empty, so it takes a minute for the glue to travel down. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to put some little drops of glue right on the edge of this frame. Like so. See that? Dollops of glue. And I can center this exactly where I want it to go. Just like so. And usually I'll let that sit and dry for about 20 minutes so that when I lift this up, the fabric just doesn't fall back down on the desk because the glue's still wet, right? So I'll usually just let it sit for a few minutes, but I'm not trying to be here until later this evening, right? And I'm trying to move on pretty quickly, but that's how I get it nice and centered in the hoop, right? And I would let that sit up and dry before trying to flip this over. But I'm going to try to move past and just carefully lift this up and try not to shift anything. And now we can take this hoop and open it up just a little bit and find how we want it to be centered and fit it right down over top. See that? That's pretty good, right? And now I'm going to go ahead and just tighten this up a little bit. And now at this point, we can take a pair of scissors and trim this fabric right around that hoop. And I like to leave about 1/2 inch to turn under. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just eyeballing it. It might be slightly more than 1/2 inch. And in some areas, if I'm not paying attention, it might be less. Someone just drove by and honked their horn, so now Dolly's going to start barking. And see how the fabric just sort of ripples right around the back side like that. And then we're going to do arts and crafts again, right? I'm going to take my Aleene's tacky glue and see that little pucker right in this area. I like that fabric to be nice and snug against the inner part of the hoop. So I'm going to take some glue and I'm going to put some right inside that little puckering section of fabric right there, right? And then I'm going to run a couple drops right along that edge. And then I'm going to take some glue and I'm going to run it right along the inside of this hoop. And it doesn't have to be neat. And I'm being generous with the glue. Do you know what I'm saying? That is pretty generous with the glue. But then I'm going to take a handy dandy crochet needle, crochet hook. I'm going to use the back side and I'm going to spread this glue out. You could use a popsicle stick. You could use your finger. You could use anything. But I'm just going to spread that glue evenly on the inside, just like so. I'm going to clean my hook and put it back in my little cup. And now we can start turning that raw edge of fabric snug against the inside of that hoop, right? For me, this is usually messy because I'll put my fingers in the glue. But the fabric starts to soak in that glue and it gets easier to work with the fabric once it starts seeping in that glue. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm just taking my fingers and pushing that fabric snug right against that hoop. Now, I have tried several ways of finishing the back. I have taken a needle and thread and done a basting stitch in that extra fabric and then pulled that thread nice and snug and the fabric just snugs over the back, right? But I found that when I hang the piece, it sits away from the wall just a little bit whenever I do that method to finish off the back. You know what I'm saying? And so I finally started doing this, and this piece will hang snug against the wall with the fabric pulled over like this. And you see I'm just using my fingers and just snugging it down. Of course, I used a white fabric for the background and the light is horrible. But see how that is sticking up? Push it down. And as you work around it, the fabric gets softer and stickier, right? And it starts to stay nice and snug against that hoop. Aleene's tacky glue is acid free, so you don't have to worry about it messing with your fabric over time. So that's lovely. And I've done pieces like this, not embroidery pieces, but I've used the Aleene's tacky glue on projects like this where you might see the glue around the edge and it didn't ever yellow. But because I'm selling these pieces in my studio tour, I've almost thought about cutting out with my Scan and Cut a circle of some kind of material that I can write on that fits snugly just inside here, and then covering up the whole back of the work too. I don't know. What do you think? Do you like seeing the back of the work, or do you think I should cover that up with something? But just working your way right around it, the fabric snugs in nice and close. See that? And that's about as neat as I can get that fabric to tuck in there. Do you know what I'm saying? And let me get a little wipe and get this glue off my fingers before I start touching everything. Belinda says, what size hoop is that? This is a 4-inch hoop. Sheila said, part of me was starting to panic at what you were doing until I remembered it was embroidery, not cross stitch. Mimsy says, I like the idea of it being covered with your info on the back. Yeah, I was thinking I could sign the piece and date it and say made in Matthews, Virginia, you know, and I could write that information and then just plop it right in there and glue it down. So it's really nice and finished. Do you know what I mean? Now, I did a piece for my mom. I did one of the workboats. Since it was her photo, I wanted to give her a stitched piece, right? And on hers, with a permanent black fine tip marker, I wrote photo digitized by, or photo taken by Karen Kerberg, and then the year she took the photo, and then digitized by Lisa Capen 2025. And I wrote that on the flat part of the hoop, and that actually is really neat. You know what I'm saying? But there we go, start to finish, that is our piece. And I still have to cut the little jump stitches, but I'll do that this weekend. Isn't that super cute? Like, I feel like if I turn off maybe this light, you can see a little bit better. Maybe if I turn off this light. Nope. Maybe. That's too dark. There we go. Super cute, right? If you make these, and Heather's going to post a picture on Creative Crew, I would love to see what colors you pick out. See how the light picks up that thread? Isn't that so pretty? Heather says, sublimate your signature and logo. That's a really good idea. Now I'm going to just say RN Frutia. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that. I'm so sorry. But she says, I have put ribbon inside and outside the hoop. That's a really good idea. Sheila said, cover it. You could put your information on the back in case people want more of your items. Smart. Heather says, I have to go get mine out of the bathroom and clip my jump stitches. The color of thread that I used, they almost blend in, right? But in person, I see them. So super cute and fun. And all of the steps are exactly the same to finish a project in a bamboo hoop like this, no matter which design you're doing, right? If you're interested in these, I uploaded them on Etsy this morning, so those are there. But yeah, isn't that fun? Something different for a change. We've been doing the tiny blocks for several weeks. I think I counted them. There were like 17 of them. That's a lot. And you know what? I am not sure what we're doing next week. I have no clue. I don't have any projects lined up for next week. Maybe we will just sit here and chit chat. And that might be nice for a change. I like to do that every once in a while. Do you know what I mean? Mimsy says she loves the mushroom and the hummingbird. I digitized the mushroom. Isn't that so cute? But my daughter recently moved and she's decided to decorate with mushroom themed things in her kitchen. And I was like, I want to make one she can put on her fridge. So I digitized the mushroom. And yeah, isn't that just so cute? This one is going to her to put on the fridge. Robin says, being in Maryland, I need to get the crab. Yes, you do. Doesn't it put you in the mood to do a crab boil? Chrissy says she wants the butterfly. You love butterflies. I know that. Sheila says, maybe you'll find some inspiration in the chit chat. You know what? That usually happens a lot, Sheila. And we can treat it as a Q&A. You know, if y'all have questions about anything, you can ask me. I'm kind of an open book too anyway, which I really shouldn't be. Like, I feel like I share way too much information. But technical stuff, do you know what I mean? Technical questions. And if I can help, I don't know all the answers. I'm not an expert on anything, but if I can help, I would love to. And a lot of the times when I don't know the answers, someone in the chat does. So isn't that awesome? I think that's one of the main reasons I have kept doing lives, is for the community that hangs out during the live. Do you know what I'm saying? Melissa loves the butterfly and the hummingbird. Karina says, what about fringe embroidery? I've been seeing that's trending here lately. Have you noticed that? In a lot of the embroidery Facebook groups, I see a lot of questions about digitizing fringe embroidery. Do you know I've not done it yet? But it looks like so much fun. I saw a pair of freestanding lace earrings that had fringe along the bottom. And I was like, you know what? I might have to go get that design and try this out because it looks like so much fun. Aw, Chrissy, your mom loved hummingbirds. That's awesome. Oh, yeah, that sounds fun. Mimsy says, maybe resurrect the questions you did during COVID. That sounds fun. Oh, Mimsy, you'll have to go do a Google search for fringe embroidery. It's super cute. It looks a little fuzzy, like fringe. Do you know what I'm saying? But it adds a lot of texture and movement too. All right, y'all. My tummy is rumbly, which tells me it's getting close to supper time. I hope you have lots of fun with this. And if you make it, I would love to see your pictures and Creative Crew. And if you've never heard of Creative Crew, there's a link for the Facebook group down in the description box. Maureen helps moderate that page. We have lots of fun there. You can share all kinds of creative stuff, right? That's why it's not Quilting Crew. If you paint, if you sew, clothing, if you make pillows, if you make t-shirt quilts, if you garden, creative things, we want to see it. Please share your pictures. More than likely, your pictures will be inspiration for someone who sees it, and I love that. I hope y'all have a fun and safe holiday weekend. I for sure will see y'all here next Friday. Who knows what we're doing? It'll be a surprise. And until then, I'll be seeing all your pictures over on Facebook. Okay? Yes. Patreon members, I'll see y'all all this weekend. Y'all gonna be so sick of me by Sunday evening. Have fun, everybody. I'll see y'all later, okay?
Stitching inside each patch a story. Every thread song binding love and fabric where we belong. Every stitch a whispered prayer. In every corner I find